I think the future unicorn on the attendees here. Sure. So, like, just to give a highlight on how I started my career. So, like, I'd say half of Indians we do like an engineer, right? And straight away went for my MBA. So that's how I started kind of my educational journey. Was also really passionate about design. That is something I picked up as a hobby during my undergrads, right? Designing posters to then presentations and essentially helping few startup ideas in my college and working with our seniors to help them design UI UX, and that's how I got introduced and into the world of design. So even though I started my first job as a consultant, worked for 2 years in the US, I realized one thing, that I'm really passionate about building products, right? And within first 3 months of my first job, that is what my manager saw, and I was moved into building products for our B2B clients, right? So that's how essentially I moved up into UI UX. That has really helped me over my career path, right? Even before that, right, we all when we are in college, right, we have a lot of ideas which we want to work on. The same was with me, right? Always wanted to create something, even though not realizing if I'm ready or not, but always wanted to do something of our own to create an impact in the universe, right? And with that, we started our first company, even though just fresh out of college, right? Which was like we mentioned, Bank of Karma. It's a very young team, right? We were all pass out from IIM Calcutta, trying to create a kind of a bank where the social good can be accumulated like credits, right? We all do a lot of good things, and specifically corporates, right? But there's no metric or no recognition for doing social work. So we are trying to create that, but soon realize that essentially we don't have the experience of way of monetizing it. How do we sell it? Even though it was a very creative project, everyone likes the idea of it, that, okay, why don't we have this? We have a civil score for credit rating. Why don't we have a karma rating for all the good you do? So started with this and truly realized that, okay, we don't have the experience or the finances to support or work on something like that. So essentially got dropped off in like 4 months. The co-founder was the same, Eklavya. So was the first failure where we were essentially not committed enough, right? And similarly, in my next venture was something very similar to Cred, but 2 years before Cred, right? And that's where we also was working on a credit card aggregation app, same with Eklavya. Again, struggled to figure out a monetization path, right? Did not have a lot of money to spend on fancy UI or anything. And essentially it dropped off again after 9 months after building the first prototype. I think this is what all these experiences have taught me, that every time I was approaching creating this, it was always a half-baked effort, right? I was also trying to do it in part-time, right? Just so that I can have the revenue stream coming in and support. And that is where I think the first learning which I got is that doing essentially half of something is essentially not doing anything. And that's what I've realized firsthand, that you can give half of your brain to building something. It will take a lot of time. You'll always be split on priorities. And that's why when we started the third time, which is the Record Club, we were very sure. Specifically, I know that I wanted to start it with the same co-founder. So what we did essentially was that I quit my job first. And then I thought of what I want to do, because I wanted to understand that 50% of Abhinav cannot create anything. That is what I've learned. So I just wanted to see that 100% of Abhinav can do something or not, right? So I wanted to give myself a fair chance. So that's a very important thing, right? In the first early path, I really would like to advise everyone, be it your first startup or your first job, absorb everything like a sponge, right? Don't think that, okay, it's just a job and okay, we'll get a salary at the month of it, because everything you learn will be utilized at the later point in time. Whatever you are doing, is it a job or it's a startup or anything you want to do in life, absorb it like a sponge, right? And I have great learnings from my bosses, which I've learned, which I use in Recur every day, right? And the second most important thing, which I think, which a lot of us struggle, and we have struggled in Recur a lot, is to groom on how an entrepreneur or anyone who's building something should not love their solutions, right? Try to remain and try to obsess about the problem you're trying to solve. Go deeper into understanding, breaking down. So love your problems in a nutshell, right? Don't love your solutions. Solutions are easy. You tell someone, they will give you 100 solutions. That is not the idea here. It's about how you can essentially prioritize and solve the right problem and double down on them, that you will create something which is really magic, right? And that is why as a PM, my journey has really helped me understand that, okay, don't obsess, right? Don't obsess on something looks good, looks beautiful, or you think will work. Obsess on what the problem it is solving, and is it the right problem to solve or not, right? And essentially that is what will save you on a lot of wasted effort and will actually create true impact. So I think these two things, right? Give 100% of anything you do and definitely love your problems more than solution. It will really help you as an entrepreneur. And we have seen it in Record Club, right? I was very sure that I don't want to be divided, took a chance, 100% commitment. And then essentially, when we were looking to start Record Club, essentially we thought of a growth platform that will create like a growth platform for any type of founder. They need advisory, they need help, they need support, we'll provide that. And then after talking to 50 founders, we realized that the core problem for any startup journey and any entrepreneur journey is to raise capital, right? And that is where we obsess deeper about and deeper into how we can make or democratize access to capital, right? And create a truly revolutionary platform that actually saves a lot of time for founders, is accessible, is hassle-free, right? And can give capital almost instantly, right? So that's the obsession we started with, really broke down our problem to focus on the core problem, which we needed to solve first before we think about creating a brilliant solution which can look fancy, but no one needs. Right. So I think that is how these learnings really helped me build Record Club as it's today.
Thank you, Abhinav. Whoever has questions for Abhinav, we request you to please type them in the chat box. We'll be happy to take all of them at the end of the session. So what I gathered is a common co-founder in all of your 3 startups, and more power to you for this one. Vijay, next, I would love for you to please share with us your entrepreneurial journey, reflecting on some tough learnings, some message that you would like to pass on to the budding entrepreneurs here.
Sure. Right. Thank you, Aditi. Thanks for that wonderful start, Abhinav. I think there are actually a lot of good lessons to be learned from what you said. So I would like to start with what he mentioned, right? So a lot of us think about startups, thinking, I want to make it big, I want to earn a lot of money, I want to be different from my colleagues, I want to be my own boss, right? So we'll have a lot of reasons why we'd like to start. I think what is most fundamental before you start something is knowing what is the problem you're solving for, right? So I think that's more fundamental. So the problems that I started in my journey, I was in US and I was not happy there. I just felt very alien. I thought I should probably be doing something for the nation. I came back and then I didn't know what to do. So for a moment, I thought, for a few days, I was contemplating joining politics and actually played a role there. So be a volunteer teaching coding, right? So this is how I started my journey. I later realized I'm too naive to be in politics, right? So that's when I thought, how can I change that, what I was doing, the training and all, to a business, right? So eventually I convinced my college. So I'm from JNTU Hyderabad campus. So I convinced my college to actually start an incubation center in their campus. So when I started, it was the first campus incubation center in India at the time. So I trained people and I did successfully build a business. I was also working with actively with the triple IT incubation at the time. In fact, I was part of a startup called PhotoLink. So that was actually started by triple IT students, right? So I have a connection there. So I was running, I did grow that other business into 100 people consulting business. I did come out of it. It didn't go so well. I lost everything I built. I went down to zero. So this was in 2012. From there, I picked up again and then again had to start. So I built a services company called Technovert. So Technovert is now about 400 people company. So while at Technovert, I got fascinated with the products and then started Keka.com. Keka, by the way, is a Telugu name. A lot of Telugu people think it's a abbreviation for something. But it's actually a Telugu word, right? So today we are about 400 people at Keka also. So we are around 6 million in ARR, annual recurring revenues. So primarily bootstrapped, right? Not taken any funding so far. So that's been my journey. So if I have to give a message to the founders, I would start with this one. I think I'm actually going through some of the conversations and the questions. So first question that came was, how do I get funding? I think the answer to that is, what is the problem you're solving? And is someone ready to pay you for a problem, right? So if there's a customer who's ready to pay you for a problem, there's an investor who's ready to invest in your problem, right? So that's how that whole thing goes. So it all starts with the problem that we're solving, right? I think a lot of mistakes, if I made, were made around that, right? So trying to solve a problem that did not actually, have people to buy it, right? Or trying to create a solution, because a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, are creators, right? Coders, designers, or product managers, right? So we all try to build what we think is cool, may not necessarily be something that customers may be willing to pay for. I think that's where, that focus, if we're able to get hands-on and build something that is worth customers are actually, find a value. I'm pretty sure, funding and all are just part of the process. They are like, so a few years ago, funding may be a challenging one. I don't think funding is a challenging anymore. In fact, this session, you're seeing that there's some company that is saying, they'll fund you, right? So that is the company that is sponsoring this meet. So funding is not a big deal. I think chasing your first revenue is the biggest thing you should be accomplishing. Yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Vijay. Super insightful. Next, I would like to invite Rajshekhar. How about you, Rajshekhar? How has your journey been with Runo?
So thank you, Aditi. In lot many ways, T-Hub and Trigger both had their share of contribution to where Runo is today. So it's my extreme pleasure to be part of this session conducted by both of you guys. So, see, the journey of the founders, especially for the early stage startups, is tough. It's stressful. So I was in fact blessed to, at an early stage to be part of a Lab 32 program of T-Hub. So in fact, I could actually go there, hear some of the success story of the founders. In fact, I made a couple of friends there who we shared our share of successes and failures. So that kind of gave some sort of relative comfort or relative confidence, and it kind of worked as a catalyst. So coming back to Runo, we are about 3-year-old company technically, but 15 months back we have soft launched our product in the market. As we speak today, we serve about 400 plus clients in India, predominantly SMEs. Runo, you might know, it's a SIM-based call management CRM. So we are an early entrant into this space. So we needed a lot. We need to spend significantly in experiments and products. So our current run rate MRR is about 20 lakhs, but we are well poised to hit about 1 CR by the end of this calendar year. So that's the journey so far as Runo is concerned.
Thanks, Rajshekhar. Thank you. Moving to the next segment of our session and going deeper with our questions. And an entrepreneur without capital is like a musician without an instrument. We would love for the founders here to share with us, what has your journey been like? How have you actually been able to manage your capital stack? Let's start with Abhinav. Before that, we would love to do a poll for all the participants. Look out for the poll with us. How have you been raising growth capital for your business? This is for the entrepreneurs, the founders in the session. Choose one of the options from the poll options: VC funding, debt, subscription-based financing, or bootstrapped your growth. Over to you, Abhinav. I work with Abhinav, and he's always advising founders as part of the Recker Club community. Fight for equity with your investors, but do not fight for equity with your employees. So, Abhinav, how did you manage your capital stack at Recker Club?
I think from the very beginning, just to quickly run through a topic that we all struggle, right? Whenever we are working. So first of all, I think because we were in late stage, we have some money of our own. So we try to bootstrap it in the first half, which is not possible in my previous experiences because we did not have that capital. So there are two options. So we decided to bootstrap it for the first 6 months. So me and my co-founder, we put in some money. We set a corpus before even starting. Okay, this is the corpus. We'll pay all the salaries from here. Until it's extinguished, we'll keep on doubling down. Right. So that conviction is very important if you're trying to bootstrap. Otherwise, there are definitely other opportunities that you can at idea stage also, if you're really confident and you have really factual information on the need and the problem you're trying to solve again. There is some investor who will definitely put in the money, right? Like Vijay brilliantly pointed out that raising capital is easy. It says you should be really passionate about it and you should be really confident that the problem exists and someone is in the end willing to pay for it. So you can definitely these days reach out to your angel networks and these accelerators. They really help you give some amount of cash. Don't think of raising a lot of hundreds of crores in the beginning because you don't need that. In the early phase, all you need is availability of cash to pay, few salaries, few tools that you are using. So look for a smaller round, close it quickly, and you can easily raise capital if you don't have ability to bootstrap. But when it comes to Record Club, we bootstrapped it for 6 months and then had fantastic investors and had great conversations because we had a product and we were able to build a team. And like Aditi told, we took a slightly different approach because we were really, the ambition which Record Club is building is that founders should really love equity, right? And people who are actually making wealth should probably be the employees. So we decided that, okay, on a policy that every employee of Record Club will have significant ownership. And even before we raised capital, we were able to get fantastic talent, like really senior people, really good team. We were able to build even before raising our first round of external capital. And that was all because we were not hellbound on equity as a team, because we look at that dilution as a team, right? So we were able to give them significant equity to attract good talent that really helped us to build the right team at early stage, which often I think is difficult, right? Because this is the team that is going to take you from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 100. So yeah, that's the approach we took. Sorry, Aditi, I think you're on mute.
Thanks. Sorry.
And just to add, it's a time-consuming process, guys. Like it takes a lot of time in building the pitch deck. It takes a lot of interviews, a lot of LinkedIn messages to reach out to the right fund, right? It takes a lot of meetings. Once you strike that communication, then it takes a lot of time when you get a term sheet. Then again, it takes a lot of time when a due diligence is done, and then you get the money. So it's a full-time job, right? Which a founder and the essential leadership team has to invest a lot of time to raise capital, right?
So just to add to this, Abhinav, so when Ricard approached us and we were in fact doing decent amount of revenues monthly, I think the day first when I spoke to Ricard and the day when it hit my bank account, it took like straight 7th day, the fund got created into our account. And we, by the way, have raised our first round also from a VC, and that took something like 7 months. So that's what Ricard did to us, at least. I hope I'm not sounding endorsing you guys, but the first thing, what it gave us a lot of cushion during those days, because you never know till the money hits your account whether that investor's money is coming to you or not. So Ricard gave that the freedom to think big. So the two advantages we took from you guys is, one, obviously we pay a very negligible interest rate, and the second is, I think we pay interest on the amount we use, not on the entire fund which is allocated. So that was fabulous. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to add.
Great.
Thanks so much, Shekhar. This is wonderful to hear, and of course, I mean.
Yeah, and I think probably we can just open the presentation, and I think we can keep the conversation going. Where like Vijay and yeah, great. Let me know if you can see my screen, because I think it's the same topic we wanted to cover.
Yes.
Great. So I think, like we were just discussing, right? The topic was that essentially, how do we raise capital? If you are an entrepreneur, what are the options essentially available to all of us? And I think Vijay, Rajs will keep on adding on their experiences. And most of us, as early days, we always think about capital in form of venture capital or equity, right? We always say, okay, this is the only option. But essentially, if you look at all the stage of your company as it grows, you primarily have two options. Either you can dilute some shares. When I say dilute, you actually have to sell few shares of your company to an investor or to a venture capital who's willing to pay you some money in exchange of that, betting on that how well you can grow and what the future potential is, right? So that is one way, which essentially obviously reduces ownership, not only for you, but also for your entire team, right? So whenever you are raising external capital, you dilute everyone. So essentially you are losing ownership of your company slightly, but it depends on how much you dilute. The other option, like other challenge with equity, is that it is not accessible to all, right? We were just reading a report in CB Insights that only 2% of entrepreneurs are actually able to raise, which in early stage, like we just said, is significantly improving. But if you throughout see that a lot of people, they really struggle, and it's still not accept like available widely to everyone, essentially where we want to be. One few good things about equity capital is that there is no obligation to repay capital on a time period. So essentially, investor is taking a long-term kind of approach with you that if you go big, they will probably recoup the money when you say go for an IPO or you exit the business through acquisition. So that's the bet they are taking, right? In exchange, you are giving some ownership, right? And there is no guarantees of repaying it back. But what it really adds is investor pressure, which I think at early stage it is good, but as you grow, it can also be bad, right? Because you have to streamline your reporting, which is, I will say, good and bad. But there's a lot of pressure once someone is invested in your company, right? They will keep on asking you questions, and you'll have to probably answer them because they have invested money and taken a bet on you, right? When we talk about debt and loan, essentially, these kind of financing essentially does not have any impact on ownership, and really the access of debt or loan is even limited than equity or VC capital, right? Only 0.04% of entrepreneurs are able to raise debt for their business, right? What it comes with is an obligation to repay capital, that whatever you have raised, you have to repay that money at some point in time, which whenever you are raising capital. And usually often it requires some kind of a guarantee or a security or a collateral to raise capital, right? And most of the young entrepreneurs really struggle in providing that, because like when I started, I did not have any, say, house to probably mortgage or give a guarantee, right? So those kind of option is really not available. And that is what we started with. This is the landscape. After talking to 50 founders, we realized early in the phase that there need to be a better way, right? And is there an alternative way which is better than equity debt, right? And solving for the same issues, that access is not there. It takes a lot of time. And essentially, as entrepreneurs, we should be focused on building stuff, then building a pitch deck, right? Because building your product or your service or your company is what will generate true value and not debt. But we all understand that capital is required, right? Because like Aditi was saying, that what capital never ensures success, but lack of capital can often lead to failure. So with that thought, I think that is kind of an overview on what we wanted to talk about. And just to talk about alternative way, like Raj really mentioned that, okay, equity is there, debt is there. What are the different options now available? And who are these options available to? Right. So when we talk about what we are doing, like Rekar, it's a subscription or contract-based financing. Essentially, what we have created is not equity. So we don't take for any share or any kind of dilution. And essentially, it is not restrictive debt. Right? So we are not putting any kind of securities, covenants, guarantees on the founders. What we essentially do is, it is only available to companies which has some revenue. So you need to be post-revenue, right? What we solve for is time. Like Raj was mentioning, that we try to save on time because we realize that it is important for you to build something, and money and time spent in raising money should not be the time where you spend most of your time. The funding amount which you can raise essentially through something like this, a fully digital platform, is up to 50% of your annual revenue. So if you are making a revenue of say 1 crore, you can get up to 50 lakhs, versus if you're making 10 crores, you can go up to 5 crores of funding amount. And the cost essentially is charged in form of an upfront discount, right? So what does it mean essentially? Say if you have a contract with your customer which is going to pay you say $1,000 a month, that is $12,000. What Rekar have created is a trading platform, so you can trade that future revenue stream. So you know that 1,000 is going to come in next 12 months, and you get up to say 90%, for example, upfront. So all your $10,800 you will get today, which you can use today in growing your company, doing more marketing, hiring more people, right? And without spending any time in raising that capital. So that is how you can essentially upfront your revenue, just like your customer paid you, rather than monthly, annually upfront, right? Another option which is also available to you guys is revenue-based financing, right? It is again available once you have some revenue. It takes few weeks, again faster than other options. But how it works essentially is that you trade your future revenue and you have to pay a percentage of your future revenue, right? It is not linked to contract. It is not essentially don't have the visibility of what you will collect. So what can happen is that if you really are growing month over month, which you will be growing your revenue, say 20-30% month over month. So what you end up doing is that you end up paying that money faster, right? So because they take a fixed share of your future revenue, so it's 10% of your next month's revenue. If your next month's revenue is higher, they'll take quicker and you will end up closing that line quicker. So it ends to be kind of expensive if you're a growing company. But if you have more like a D2C model, there is seasonality, there is unpredictability. It's a very good model for going after that, right? And I think Raj, like you were mentioning, like any words on how essentially this kind of a subscription trading model was able to help you? I think last time. Anyway.
Until then, we'll quickly ask one question, Abhinav. From the audience, we have a question for you. How do you foresee the alternative financing option growing in the next couple of years and in the next decade?
Sure. So I think just to understand like why we exist, right? Essentially because we are trying to solve one big problem, which always exists with traditional financing when they say equity and debt. So just imagine you are a founder, right? You're trying to create something. If you can get money faster, I think that's the most important thing, because you can do everything you want to do now. So that time is the most important thing which we really obsess about and give providing capital, right? And I think we don't foresee in the next few years or a decade that equity or debt can be given that faster, because it involves a lot of documentation, a lot of DD. And that is where we have invested a lot of time in automating our kind of a underwriting algorithm so that we can do it on the go, right? Right now, we can give you terms within 30 minutes of you submitting the data. So I think the speed is one which we definitely see. And we see of a macro environment, we see that equity funding itself starting this year has been slightly slow, right? There's a slowdown in the amount of funding as well as the number of deals which are getting done, because everyone is skeptical, right? So that's why it is taking much more time. So the factor which we are trying to solve is actually getting worse, at least in the short term, in the next 1 to 2 years. And when we talk about, say, a decade hence, we truly feel that this will become one of the primary way for a set of companies to raise capital, just because of the flexibility and the kind of power it is giving to a founder, right? You don't have to talk, you don't have to do anything. All you do is connect your data and then possibly raise capital whenever you need it, right? So that kind of a do-it-yourself model, do-it-yourself financing is, I think, the way forward, because it is saving a lot of productive time of yours and your team to raise capital. Cool. So just to highlight that, okay, say you are a great founder and you raise equity, right? Every time you raise equity, you are diluting your company. And I think one thing which I really want to highlight for every one of us, because we want to create unicorns and big companies, is that dilution essentially means that you're losing a share of your company. So you look at Zomato, Dipinder only had 5.5% share because they diluted so much in the previous round that when they went for IPO, 6-7 billion, he just had 5.5% of the ownership, right? And that is when you really understand that, okay, this is the way that you want to build a company. Most of the wealth will be generated by the equity investors, because they're the one who will be owning majority of your shares, right? And that is why we urge founders to be more diligent in designing their capital stack. We don't say that don't take equity. Equity is really good, right? But with this new way of financing, what we think is more like a complementary to your activities, right? So like in Runo, Raj was able to raise venture capital, but also using Recur as an alternative financing to reduce that dilution. So say if you are raising X amount of money, can you reduce that by just 5% only? In the long term, what it will do is it will save a lot of dilution for you. So say if in 6 rounds you create a unicorn and you went for an IPO, just by saving 5% with this alternative financing route, you'll end up saving around 100 million worth of equity just by 5% substituting your round with an alternative financing, which is non-dilutive, right? So that is how we essentially urge everyone to be more diligent, right? And just to give a very quick summary, right? Whenever you are building something, it's called an installation period where you have no revenue. That's the best time to definitely go for equity, right? Because alternative financing does not open up at this point in time. You can raise from your friends, a VC, accelerator, incubator, will take a time, but that's the best time because you're not actually running your like operations at that high scale, right? Because you have little to no revenue. But once you have that, once you have something which is generating revenue, right, and you have a product market fit, then definitely look out for these options, which is non-dilutive, and try to substitute. Don't try to eliminate, because this also gives you opportunity to have VC network, their connect, their support, as well as save on your dilution, right? So to just summarize, who is Record Club for? Just three things: that if you have recurring revenue, that you make consistent revenue from your existing customer, be it in form of subscription or a contract or a repeat customer, right? You can definitely apply in Record Club. If you have your annual recurring revenue or your annual turnover more than 100K, 75 lakhs, definitely you can apply and you can get funding. And what we expect is runway greater than 3 months. When we talk about runway, essentially is that as a startup, you're obviously not profitable. You're burning some money month over month. So we expect you to have at least 3 months of your burn to sustain, and then we definitely give you financing and extend your runway, right? And you can grow and you can invest that money faster. Right. Yep, I think this is what I wanted to cover.
Thanks, Abhinav. Very insightful, and thanks for answering the questions. I think we had 5 questions asking this. Vijay, I would want to understand, how did you plan on your capital management? What did you think, and what did you discover in the journey that, and how did you find out about an alternative financing and consider it and thought this versus that is better or better suited for your company? Please share with us. Thank you.
Yeah, so there are 3 stages, right? So the first stage is where you are really, you have an idea, right? At that stage, trying to convince someone to invest in your idea is very tough, right? So at that point, I also think, we should not actually be investing much capital or try to take even external capital as much as possible, right? With you, most of you, if you're come from a tech background, it makes sense to just have at least some amount of investment, right? You hire a few interns. So since most of you are going to build tech products, you don't need a huge capital to validate an idea. So there, I think you can take, hire interns, right? So pay very little, get us something workable, right? So that someone is actually paying you money. The first one to pay you money should be a customer, right? So I think first round, family and friends is okay, right? 10, 20 lakhs or so. Validate the idea, get a customer paying you some money, right? And at that point, if you think you can actually scale that concept without taking any external money, I think you should try to build revenues, right? If that is not possible, if you need external money, even that money, I would recommend that they should take very small amount, like 100K, 200K, not more than that, but dilute less, right? So because we think initially most entrepreneurs think that some funding is like God, funding is a solution for everything. It is not. What you hold as your business, if you're able to succeed it, that is much more valuable, right? So having that conviction that your business is much more valuable as you grow it, right? So that is more important. And that's when, if they were able to build even some revenues, right? Even, 5 lakh per month revenue, they will get some additional, funding help from, Recur-like platforms, because these are, the moment you start getting revenue, Recur would be okay to give you at least half of that as your capital. So that should allow you to double your revenues, right? So I would strongly advise that any business that is getting some revenue traction, they should use, they should not dilute using VC funding. They should use Recur-like platforms, right? And take it to a point where they can actually then raise bigger money from VC for growth capital, right? So we Abhinav mentioned, so VC funding is not answer for everything, and at the same time, there's nothing that says you should not raise money, right? You should raise money at an appropriate time, and you now have multiple options, right? So there's a VC money, there's a revenue-based dilution once you got revenue traction. And then, of course, during the first stages, you should actually raise your own money. So I think 10-20 lakhs if you're able to do, or if some of your students, right? So you don't need capital at all. Most of your initial investment could be from interns and your colleagues.
Thanks, Vijay. What are your future plans with, and you've done it brilliantly, bootstrapped, and now you're here. Keka is doing superbly well. What are your future plans in terms of, the capital planning? How are you seeing it? What is your point of view on, like, for a company?
Right. Like, so I'm against, so as we build more value, right? So you will reach a stage where you would need to compete with the bigger players, right? So till that point, I think I've been one of your early customers, right? So I have been using Recur on and off whenever we need money, right? And it's fast, but within a 1 week notice, we're able to get that money, right? We'll continue to use those leverages because capital coming as a debt is much cheaper than equity, but we would also be raising VC money at some point. I can't exactly give the timeline, but that would also come in at some point. But I can clearly say, like, for example, last year we thought we would raise a bridge round, 2 to 3 million round from a VC, and then we actually were able to withdraw from that attempt because we were able to get allocation from Recur-like platform. So from Recur, right? So I think we can. They are a good substitute for VCs in the initial phases, right? So if you can just double your revenue using a lending platform, your valuation doubles in a year, right? So that's the power of non-dilutive funding.
Thank you, Vijay. This gives us a lot of power and hope. And then we as Recur Club are founder obsessed. The single obsession is to provide growth capital and to help founders with however we can, along with growth capital. So thank you. Fantastic to hear that it helped you. More power to you to grow more. Moving to Rajshekhar, how do you think, with Runo, and what do you think is a good plan to manage your capital? And what was your experience like with Runo? How did you combine it with the other options? And why did you decide at this specific stage, Recur was the best option in comparison to the others?
Okay, till I heard about Recur, I had no idea about the existence of those kind of options, to be honest. So for us, well, I can only share my experience, and I hope people can just draw parallel to, especially the early stage investors. So the first 2 years of our launch, we were not generating any revenue. So, and we had, so we very well knew that even if we go to any VCs, we can't generate because it's one of its kind idea at that moment. So we did put a lot of money from our end, from friends and family, and so on. And I was obviously blessed to have a co-founder like Vamsi, who actually we were like salaryless for about 14-15 months. Then of course the product was ready, and then we knew that at some point of time we had to generate revenue. We had to raise funds because of the kind of product we are in. Right, it requires a lot of research and experiments. But yeah, so we were looking for one milestone, and that was about 8 to 10 lakh rupees of revenue per month. maybe Rika approached us when we were at 5-6 lakh rupees, and then we actually grabbed it with full. It was an opportunity come at the right time. But we actually generated a couple of interest with couple of investors, and but the valuation was too low to our liking. So that's why we dropped that and we went with Rika. As I said, it came in the 7th day state, and it straight away gave us a runway of 6 to 7 months Rika money. Yeah, so we obviously didn't utilize all of that because we could generate higher revenues over a period of time. But eventually what it helped those 4-5 months is getting me better valuation in those 4 to 5 months when we could increase our revenues. That's what Rika did to us. And eventually, obviously, we did go ahead with the VC and we raised our first pre-series. So my always advice to any, money doesn't solve all the problems, as Vijay said, we may think so. Only once you want to, double up or expand your business, or you have extreme research and product level requirements, is when I think you require money. And Rika or a similar kind of opportunity is better for the fact that it just helps you not to dilute much. The reasons well explained by Abhinav in his slides. Yeah.
Thanks, Rajshekhar. I want to open the floor, and please feel free, any one of you, to answer. Do you think, like in the macro startup ecosystem, we are witnessing a major VC pullback? Do you see that happening? Because we are participating in these conversations. It does create some amount of fear, some amount of request for knowledge from folks like you who are there.
I can probably start, and Vijay and Rajshekhar. I think as entrepreneurs, definitely, if you are building something and there's a problem, there is always money, right? So don't ever worry that, okay, I'll not be able to raise capital, because capital will follow. If you are building something, you're onto something, that conviction is that matters. What essentially is happening, and what we are seeing, is probably late stage. That you would have seen last year what was happening, that a lot of companies were becoming unicorns and they were getting more like unbelievable valuations. So at late stage, people have gotten more careful in the type of valuation they are giving, right? Just not giving for the sake of it to get that deal or to get that opportunity to invest. So that is the late stage. I think mid to late stages where people have become rational. So there's always money for good companies, but there is less irrationality where kind of FOMO investing and then kind of just competitive bidding was happening at times to just get a share of that company. So that has stopped, but it should not stop you guys, because like in early stage, if you have that commission, like there's always money available.
Vijay, what do you think? Do you also think like there is a major VC pullback coming?
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. What was the question?
Absolutely. What do you think? Is there a major VC pullback coming in the ecosystem? We're all hearing. We're all.
I think there is. Did it go less? Yes, but a lot of VCs that I know, they still have a lot of money to invest, right? So, but it did. But the quality and the evaluation criteria are going to go a little tougher, because there's a lot of money in the system. So definitely, it's less. 2022 is going to be lesser than what 2021 has been. Definitely.
I think we just lost him. Rajshekhar, we'll move to you once we have him back. Vijay, can you hear?
Yeah. Sorry.
Please.
So I don't know what point I got disconnected, but I was saying 2021 is was definitely great. 2022 we are going to have less funding, but I think for the right companies there is still good enough funding left.
And Rajshekhar, your viewpoint on this?
See, as long as you have a conviction, and investors obviously see the founders. Founders look for us as much as we look for them. So there is never a dearth of good investors, VCs, as long as you have conviction in your product, what you're building.
Thank you. And I'm hearing from all three of you that alternate form of financing complements the VC and the current, or let's call it the old conventional options of and the ecosystem of capital infrastructure which is there. And particularly talking about India market, what do you think, Abhinav? How do we platforms like Record Club complement the VC funding?
I think speaking from my experience, right? So as Record Club, when we raised our first round, it took us from the beginning to end around 12 months, right? 2 months of making the deck, then 2 months of talking to different VCs and trying to close the term sheet, right? And then it took around 4 or 5 months in the DD. And then because we were like incorporated outside in Singapore, it took another 3 or 4 months in money getting in, right? So essentially, if you think of it, it is really challenging for a company when they decide to raise funding and they get capital in say 6 to 12 months, right? Because you have to plan that better, right? And that's why we say that eventually, if you are really getting a good valuation, you are okay to raise that capital. At times, you need capital now, right? Any VC will not give you capital now, right? So to save on that time you are investing, you can keep on going and you can complement it so that you don't have that pressure, right? This peace of mind that you can come to a record, have a credit line, even though you don't use it, there is no cost to it, right? So only when though you trade, you have to discount and you get some capital upfront. So that peace of mind that something is there. And I think most of the founders, once they have few employees, they will understand that pressure, right? Because if you don't have that money to support, let alone growth, but the sustainability, which is your employee salaries or your mandatory spends, it's a nightmare. It's like the worst place to be in, right? So that is what we essentially provide to all the founders, that comfort specifically, and the time they essentially end up saving to get that capital so that they don't have to delay their growth ambitions. They can essentially do it right now and not wait for the VC money to come in.
Thank you. Vijay, your point of view on this, please.
See, I think one, I was actually going through some of the questions, right? So is it going to compete with a VC? I don't think it's going to, I think it will compete with a certain set of VCs. See, VC funding, a lot of VCs, right? So when they invest, I think I got cut off.
We can hear you.
All right, yeah. So a lot of VCs, when they raise, when they fund you, they would want you to raise in the subsequent rounds, right? So they would want you to immediately raise another round in 1 year or 2 years. That I think you can actually delay using a channel like Recur, right? And the more you delay is actually better for you, because you're going to raise your next round only when there's absolute need of money, right? VC money. So, and when you need VC money, you should need it in a bigger chunk. You should not be needing it in 2x or 3x of your revenue. It should be much bigger chunk, right? So anywhere you need smaller money, you should actually take from channels like Recur, right? But anytime you need to raise really big money, that's where you would want, right? Where there's a bigger growth promise, and that money you will need for 2 to 3 year stages, right? So there, I think you should raise VC money. Otherwise, short-term needs, I think you can raise from Recur-like platforms.
Yeah, I think brilliant point, Vijay. Like essentially, if you have, so we call it payback. So if your investment will give you returns in 2 to 3 months, it's always VC money is good because they don't ask you for that money back. But if you have something which is really predictable, like your marketing spend, salary spend, which you can actually pay back or you can earn more revenue out of it in the next 12 to 18 months, I think something like this really makes sense, like Vijay mentioned.
Interesting. I have a very interesting question, and I think I'd like to answer it, and then over to you guys to help me answer. So what is the future in alternate financing? Do you feel it might give VCs a run for their money? Thanks for your question, Anirudh. I don't think, I think we're working in a very, very complementary fashion with our partners and the community leaders, VCs, and the other, capital providing mechanisms which have existed for the longest of time and us together are working and creating an infrastructure, a a fantastic one wherein founders have all the options wherein, with your revenue you can participate, and the other options which we said. What do you think, Rajshekhar? How have the options for the founders increase, and why particularly alternate financing option for Runo and not another one of your VC rounds at this time?
So I think you've very smartly coined the word complementing. So Recur and this alternate finance is complementing the VCs rather than it's this versus them. So it's that about timing. So for us, we easily have about 24 months runway from here. So the question of raising funds. So immediately after we raised our pre-series, and there have been so many VCs reaching out to us, next round, and what would we do with that money? Rather, in 24th month, we have set up some targets like, then diluting 10% is far better than diluting 10% now. So it's about the timing. It's I won't recommend a standard template for everybody. For me, for anybody who has got a runway of 12 months, I would definitely ask to stay away from any sort of VC fundings.
Thank you.
The advantage with Recur, what we found is we only pay interest to the amount which we are using. It's like a overdraft, right? Overdue. So what do you call the bank terminology? DD money. So that's the best part. So once we repay and we are burdened with nothing, and my equity is safe, non-diluted. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Abhinav, what are the documents? A lot of people in the audience, the startup founders, want to know what are the documents that are required for Recur Club, please?
I think, first of all, it's a do-it-yourself platform. So if you really want to know and go deeper, you can just log in with your email and you can actually see the 4 things we ask for. So essentially, once you have the criteria, definitely that you have 100K in ARR and 3 months runway, all we need is 4 things. What we want is your last 12 to 24 months of invoicing, which you're doing it to your customers. We want your second thing is your bank statements for all your accounts so that we can understand how you're collecting cash from your customers. Third is we want your monthly MIS, kind of a monthly reporting, which your CA will be doing, right? And fourth is audited financials if you have it. So these 4 things, pretty handy documents. You can have it. You can connect your systems like Tally, QuickBooks, or any kind of subscription manager or finance manager you are using on the go. And then once you submit it, we can come back with the terms within 30 minutes and you can unlock capital. Just pretty straightforward. Like I advise anyone who want to explore it, just register, log in, right? You'll see everything on the platform. It's more like do it yourself. And we have live support. You can really call our associates, or you can just chat on the chat box to help you with the process.
Thank you. Thanks, Abhinav. And thank you, Vijay and Rajshekhar. Surprisingly, it just made our evening with your endorsement, because I think that's what we want, right? Our customers to say, and I promise we didn't plan for them to really endorse us like this, but this seems like a big win for us. Well, that's what we have for you here today. Thank you for joining Recur Club and T-Hub. A warm thanks to the T-Hub team. They've been a fantastic partner. And to visit and know more about T-Hub and their programs, please check out their website. We appreciate all of you signing in and hope you learned from these phenomenal entrepreneurs. Before we sign off, I would like you to all sign up on Recur Club. I get paid for this. Feel free to reach out to me or my team via email if you're interested and want to know more.